Hello there, lovely people, and welcome to the latest edition of the Finnovator with me, Stuart Bell, business coach, founder of our dairy coaching consulting, author of the book Finnovation, which is a few years behind me now, but all-round lover of financial advice models that sort of challenge some of the paradigms of the future. If you can challenge paradigms of the future, I don't know if that's a thing, but anyway. Hey, I wanted to tell you all about the podcast I've got for you today, and it's with one of those people I've come to know as a practitioner, work with as a client, but most importantly, come to call a friend and also someone I hugely respect. Reuben Zelwer is a Melbourne-based planner who, to be honest, cares so much about clients that sometimes he takes, some of the problems that they have personally. He takes them on personally. And I think, you know what? In many cases, that's something you want from an advisor, right? You want somebody who is going to care more about your money than you do. Reuben and I have worked for many, many years, and along the way, we have been through real positive upsides, and there have been a few times along the way when, it's not all been good news, let's put it that way. But most of all, what I've loved about Reuben is whenever we get together and we talk about his business, we unpack it, he's always very open about what he's good at and equally open about, the areas he wants to improve. He's one of these people, when I sit down and have a coaching meeting, he will challenge and we'll talk things through and we'll come at it from angles, but when he's ready to take action, he will take action. And it's been a pleasure just to see him as, develop as a person. I know that sounds really sort of condescending, but I just, Reuben's one of these people that I think is a real shining light in the industry and just someone who has all of the right stuff in the right place. This webinar was an absolute pleasure for me. After many years to go, we sat down, we sat down and we talked about a little side project that he started. He became the host of a radio program called the Finance Hour. And that little program of his, he decided to scale it, to leverage it in his marketing, which I think, if you're producing content, be it audio, video, written content, anytime you're producing stuff where you're talking about things you like and it could be valuable to share with other people, that presents a huge opportunity to do so. And I think if there's anything we've learned over these past months, well, it's a few things, but over these past months, I think we've learned that clients value more than ever before communication, proactive communication from people they trust, people who are in their life to advise them, and people who are experts and can add value in ways that are personal as well as financial. So we talked at this about how he did it, how he took a radio program and utilizing some systems in the back area, using some people to assist, including family. He was able to put something out there that on a regular basis shared with his target market and cut it up in many different ways. And the results he got, which I think we will find interesting, and possibly looking back through it now, it won't be as surprising the real value of what he did and how it changed his relationship with his existing clients. With so many things we could have spoken about, Reuben and I, because it's been many things we've faced and things we've worked on, but I'm really glad to unpack this one. Anyway, I will hand over to Reuben. We're going to jump in, and as usual, I hope you love it. I'll see you there. Reuben and I have known each other for quite some time. We've been working together for quite some time, and during that time, some clients you become fond with, but others you become good friends with. And Reuben is one of those people that I respect hugely as a planner, but also as a person. We've had some of the most enjoyable coaching sessions are when we sit down, and Reuben's one of these kind of guys that I love working with because they'll kind of kick the tires. They'll ask you questions. They'll seek to understand not just the concepts, but work out the bits around the edges. And when we've sort of finished having those kind of conversations, what comes out of it is a really, really, really good plan. But today, I wanted to talk to Reuben and really get a conversation going on between all of us about the journey he's been on. It wasn't too long ago where Reuben's sort of marketing, there wasn't a great deal of it, and it tended to be mostly him. He was putting stuff out there, but then over a period of time, he kind of went from this place where he was just doing similar to other businesses to he's got a radio program, he's podcasting, and he's utilizing that content in a really smart ways to, put it out there, get known, but equally importantly, and I think we're going to talk about today, to utilize it with his clients. there's a bunch more to the story as well. He's done so many different things in his business over the past few years. We've been working together before. So this is kind of an opportunity, not just talk about what happens when you put your expertise and your knowledge and you get structure around it, but also sort of to learn from somebody who I think in my experience, is a really deep thinker about a number of different areas. So how you going, man?
Good. Hey, Stu. How are you?
I'm good.
Hello,
Good
everyone.
Mate,
Thanks for the big wrap-up, Stu. I mean, that was very, very... I was trying to work out who you were talking about for a bit there, but there were a few things that sounded familiar.
There's not a word in there that is anything but 100% truth, and you know it.
Very kind.
Yeah, James has been. I was on the radio show a while back, but I was like trying to answer questions, and I was like, Reuben, I thought, really sorry, I can't hear a word you're saying. And
so that was just a question about the technical setup. But that was pretty early on. So
that was early on, but it was enjoyable.
About podcast number 20.
You've had some great guests on, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing about the podcasting is people like being on it.
I do.
People like being asked to be on it. In fact, over time, I've had people contact me and wanting to come on it, which is great. So, yeah, people like being on radio, just like they love being on your webinars.
Well, I love being on my webinars. So when you introduce, you say, "Hey," you're speaking to someone, and you go, "Would you like to be on my podcast?" How do you introduce it? What's the way that you deliver it?
Look, there's not a huge amount to it. I mean, I've actually automated it a bit now as well in terms of asking people. But, I just tell people I'm doing a show about, interviewing great business people and people who've done great things in their careers. And I think you've got a great story to tell. It's probably not that different to how you do it. And in fact, I started automating it a bit more now in terms of, communicating with people about it and getting them to book in themselves and all that sort of stuff that you taught me. But we're probably jumping ahead, aren't we?
We are jumping ahead. But I do want to know one thing before we kick in, because what's the best, most enjoyable podcast guest you've ever had and spoken to, and what made them enjoyable?
Mate, let me think about that. Well, probably actually interesting. I think the best one, it wasn't exactly so business related, but it's a young guy who started this social sort of enterprise for kids with special needs, and he started doing doing camps and weekends away for children who've got intellectual disability or things like that. And he's a young guy. He's only about 23 or 24. Not a high profile person, obviously, but it was just amazing. He hadn't had anyone in his family who had special needs, but he just had a passion to do it. And he started this sort of charity, but not only did he start it, he also, he was managing it really astutely financially, and he put a board around him and all that kind of thing. So even though it was like a charity, he was actually managing it like a business.
Wow.
And it was super impressive, for a kid of, I think he was 24, maybe 25 now, and he started it while he was still at uni at age of 21.
Wow.
So, yeah.
What was the guy's name?
His name, Dean Cohen.
Dean Cohen. Wow.
Dean Cohen, okay. Yeah.
Well,
and his the organisation's called Flying Fox.
Good name.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get into it, but I just want to know, you've been doing this for what? It's 3 years, and they're coming out 3 years.
Yeah, it's come up to 3 years. Yeah.
So what's been? You spend all this on a regular basis, sitting down and talking to these people and pulling out their stories.
Yeah.
What impact has it had on you personally, as a not just an advisor, but as a person?
Well, first of all, I've really enjoyed speaking to people and finding out about their stories. I mean, and I've even had people on who are sort of friends or maybe not close friends, but people I know are doing great stuff. And you don't often have the conversation socially about what they're doing in their business or their career. And it's actually really enjoyable, just connecting with people on that level as well. So I've really enjoyed that part of it. Because it sort of started more as a, more typical sort of finance related, talking about super and investment markets. And sometimes I still do talk about investment markets, but I end up pivoting more to talking to people. And I've really enjoyed that. I think it's, what us as financial planners are generally pretty good at. So that's been really good. And I've enjoyed giving other people a platform as well for them, because, for them to put out to their networks and, I've really sort of enjoyed giving people that opportunity. Other than that, it's been a great way to express, what I'm thinking as well. I've got a segment which I started pretty early on called Reuben's Rant, which is, not quite like John Laws, or what's the other shock jock?
Oh, there was John Singleton used to come out.
Yeah, so it's not quite like that, but it just makes you sort of think about something
Alan
that's
Jones?
sort of Alan Jones, exactly.
That's the one, yeah.
Sorry, yeah. Makes you think about something that's kind of, I don't know, irking you, or something a little bit controversial, and it's actually really good fun just to kind of get out there and just do a 2-minute kind of rant about something. I really enjoyed that.
You published an article, I think it might have been about a year and a half ago, and I remember you shared it with me. It was like, why I think we should charge fees to dead people.
Why it's okay to charge fees to dead people. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting. But it was a well constructed argument. It was a rant, but and that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
You get people's
That's
attention.
right.
Yeah, I loved it.
That's right. That was actually my most popular LinkedIn thing. Yeah, it got people going, which is
It's funny. It's like, you remember Chris Bates?
Yeah, he's massive on LinkedIn, isn't he?
He's huge on LinkedIn. He had the same thing. I think his first post he ever put out was something around like why risk advisors suck or something. It was something so
right.
Like
just something really
it was just
really obnoxious.
Yeah, but that's So now let's dive in because there's so much to cover.
Yeah.
For those, most people in here will be familiar with you, but for those who don't, what do you do? Who are your typical clients?
Yeah.
What does the business look like? How long have you been doing it? What do you love about it? Give us the 2-minute. This is Reuben.
Cool. So I've been I've been financial planning for close on 20 years almost now, which is sort of quite hard to believe. Started in accounting. When I had to do my first timesheet, I kind of realized it wasn't for me. No, not quite. I did a few timesheets, and then I sort of worked out that's not really what I want to do. I want to do something that's a bit more forward-looking as opposed to, backward looking. So sort of jumped in, did a bit of paraplanning to start with. And then, after a year and a half, being a young guy, 25, I thought I was too good for that. So sort of jumped straight into found a business called Trust Company that were recruiting advisors, and jumped straight in to the deep end. I know a lot of people are doing that now. Like a lot of people seem, in the XY Advisor Network seem to start really early, but then in those days, people probably hung around for 4 or 5 years at least doing paraplanning admin work. So I was quite young. So that was, I didn't quite realize how difficult that would be.
Okay.
And then worked at another firm called Planning Partners for about 8 or 9 years. Was a partner there. Then me and my business partner went our separate ways, and started Adapt about 8 years ago. So we do. My clients tend to be probably similar to a lot of people out there, but maybe at the higher end. I've got a lot of business owner clients because traditionally, in the initial stages, got a lot of referrals from accountants.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got like the medical professionals, and I've got some quite senior executives as well. And then sort of, being, having been doing this for a while, you have clients that move to the retirement stage. So not that many that might have started, you haven't picked up that many retirees as such, but just by virtue of being in it for a while, the clients have sort of moved to that stage. So, and it's a typical, obviously, holistic advice. We've going through the program, we've sort of refined that over time, but it's obviously a mix of investments being a portion of it. But all the other sort of strategy work that goes with it, the superannuation, tax structuring, estate planning, some insurance as well. Don't do mortgages, sort of work with other people on that. So that's a business, and it's probably now at about 90 active clients.
Okay.
Which either half year, probably majority half yearly reviews, some at annual, and then there's like a probably smattering of insurance only type clients as well. So it's quite a kind of neat sort of business.
Beautiful. I know it's funny. You made the point about sometimes you get a chance to ask questions that you never asked before. I never asked you about Adapt Wealth. Why? What made you choose Adapt?
It's funny you say that because it's when I was starting, it was like I was thinking of all these different names, and that financial planner. Sometimes we can fall into this trap of trying to find these Latin names, and I was thinking I was going to call it a Finnovator.
Like Ardere.
Yeah, that's right. There's lots of those kind of things. We like to think we've got to call it something special. So I was like a Finitas, it was a Finitas and Adapt. And Adapt was really, the concept really was that, we've got to adapt to different circumstances. Whether it's things that are happening in investment markets or things that are happening in people's financial lives. It really was sort of a principle that I believe in. I don't believe in kind of always being stuck in the past. I don't necessarily believe in, throwing everything out and starting complete radical change. I sort of believe in incremental change, and that was sort of what I wanted. In the way I was running my business, I wanted to incrementally change, and I've always wanted to, and also potentially changing the way you engage with clients as well, and everything from how you look at investment markets to how you can keep adapting and adding value. It definitely reflected a philosophy.
What do you think's how long? Sorry, actually, let me ask a question. Adapt Wealth. How long has the business been in existence?
8 years.
8 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So although it's actually, I mean, it's a mature business, but it's not a really old business, is it?
No.
So what do you think's the best decision you made along those 8 years to where you are now? What do you think are the best decisions you've made or lessons you've learned? There you go. There's a tiny question, Reuben.
Yeah, best decisions. Well, I think maybe just making sure that the business sort of fit in with my lifestyle and my sort of goals, right? In terms of, how much I wanted to work, how hard I wanted to work, how, the kind of clients which I took on. I've always been pretty careful with the clients that I take on, really the ones that I enjoy working with and want to add value. So I think I'll work that out pretty quickly. And I think it's obviously easier when you start a new business. But also acknowledging that, yes, I want to grow with the right clients. I didn't want to grow enormously. I wanted to have it fit in. I do sort of some community work and all that sort of stuff. And really just, I guess, ensuring that the business, fit the goals and the lifestyle that I wanted. And also, I think, trying to engage openly with clients and just, as I said, making those sort of incremental changes over time. A lot of stuff that we did together, on the program, has really been helpful. So I think that's probably the most important one is making sure it fits in with my life and what I really want to do.
Perfect. So with that end, just so we can record this bit and use it again, of all the things we've covered in the program, what do you think has been the most helpful or the one that's really, got you the best results?
I think it's been using systems and technology.
Okay.
Just systemizing things better, and I suppose, there's lots of small incremental things, except from the way you do file notes. I've now got a remote staff member. I think it's been around just efficiency and how you give advice and sort of being able to do what you do in less time. I reckon I from the right, I just became more efficient in how I use my time.
So let's jump into that, because I know when you first started doing the podcasting, it worked another way. And we were just talking before we came on board, and it sounds to me like it's just gone to a next level in terms of the back office. Let's go right to the very beginning. How did this opportunity come up? Were you doing a lot of marketing before it came up? It's probably the first.
Do you want to know how I got into it?
Yeah, I kind of do.
Okay, so it's a funny story. It's been one of those things that's always been on my bucket list. It's always been at the back of my mind that I wanted to do a radio show. Yep. And there's a local radio station in our community called J-Air. And I was at my folks my folks got a place on the beach in Frankston, which is down the Mornington Peninsula. And I was down there one summer for a week or so. And my dad's one of these blokes that he's a very friendly guy and he's always dragging people in from here or there. And, he brought some guy in I'd never met before. And I was chatting with him, and it turns out that he's the president of this radio station.
Wow.
So this guy, came up for the day. He was having a great time. He went to the beach. We gave him lunch. He fell asleep on the couch. He hung around for dinner, had a few drinks. And I said to him, look, how's the station going? And, do you have anything that's sort of business or finance related? And he goes, we don't. And, just put something together, a bit of a proposal. and yeah, we'd love to do it. So that's really how it kicked off.
So the lesson here is, if you can't invite the president of a radio station down and get them drunk, it's just ask, really, isn't it? It's put it out
think
there.
that's the only way. That's the only path to do it, is to have the president of the radio station come down to your holiday house, fall asleep on the couch, and have a few glasses of wine. If you're not doing it that way, I just don't know what other path there is.
So just to Reuben's holiday house is available now for rent on Airbnb. Connections don't come free, but yeah. So essentially, you just put it out there and you asked.
Yeah.
What did the proposal look like?
It was nothing. It didn't take pages and pages. It was a bit about who I was. A bit about what I wanted to do. The importance of financial advice and all that sort of stuff. It wasn't something that I spent any longer than an hour on. So not a huge amount to it.
They phone you back. They're like, "Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah,
come on in."
Yeah, come on in. It sounds good. Come on into the studio. At the first few episodes, Craig Bigelow did them with me, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
he sort of did maybe the first 5 or 6 with me, which was great. Come in, learn how to use the equipment, and go for it. So
first time you're in there, did they kind of close the door on you and go, off you go, and you were like, holy moly, what do I do?
Pretty much, yeah. Although I have to say, I adapted reasonably quickly to it. But sure, the first number of episodes a little bit scratchy, and maybe you listen to yourself after and you thought, you sounded a bit low on energy and that kind of thing. So I probably listened to myself a little bit in the first while to try and work out how I could improve it.
That's
but the thing is with this. The initial thing was doing a radio show, and I only sort of, once I was doing that, I realized, hang on, there's really good software here where they record the show on.
Yeah.
I can turn this into a podcast. So I kind of worked that out maybe 7 or 8 episodes in and figured, well, I can actually use all this content. So I got to that realization. I thought, yeah, great. And I, it got my website designer. I was designing a new website, got them to fit it in to that. And before you knew it, it was a podcast.
Just I want to pick up on Jared's question, how to start, because you started by going out and going, right, what is a platform that I could just put it out there and put a couple of pages out there and see who get there. And you in particular chose JAir, but
but that was the rest. I mean, there's so much resources out there to and I was just thinking about that before. There's so much resources out there in terms of what you need to start the podcast. I'm just trying to remember what it was, but maybe we'll put it on afterwards. There's a website which I looked at a lot in the beginning. Yeah, the podcast host is one of them. That's probably the one, but let me have a look and I'll double check.
Okay.
But there's so much stuff out there, in terms of how you get going. And, I was sort of fortunate that, I didn't need the equipment because I went into the radio station, right? But the equipment is not difficult at all. It's simple microphones and that sort of thing. And it probably takes a bit more effort if you're having people on the phone. Remote, like that. You probably need to be a little bit more careful with your technology to make sure it sounds right. But you can get going really quickly.
So equipment,
and there's lots of podcast hosting sites. There's, the one that I used was Omni, which was fantastic, but it was probably at the upper end. There's, Blueberry, there's Podbean. There's a whole lot of them, a whole lot of different places where you can host your podcast.
Like in terms of audio, what's important to know that, because I've certainly read in videos that audio is one of those things that if it's poor, people just check out immediately. So what's been your experience?
Yeah, well, look, once again, invest in a decent microphone. There's no great science to it. It's it doesn't have to cost more than $150.
It's true.
So really that's fine. Yeah, I think that's a bit more high tech. You've got there, Stu.
That's about a $240 mic.
Oh, really?
It's an XLR. It's called the Procaster by Rode.
It's awesome.
It's got boom. That's what makes it look. But there's also one called the Podcaster, which is a USB mic, and I think you got to ask the question, are you going to use standard analog equipment, in which case you get the analog stuff? If you're not, just get the USB version. And I've got a USB. You probably see it on the desk over there.
Yeah.
It's a really old ATR, and that's what I use for recording sort of all of my blogs and things with the AI stuff. So,
the equipment is really easy.
It is.
Really easy.
What else is you going to start is one thing I might mention. If you are going to have guests, you need to understand a little bit about the way that mics work. So, do you want to talk through the omnidirectional versus cartoid and all the rest of it?
I probably not exactly the person to do that, Stu, to be honest, because as I said, I went into the radio station, it was all set up there, right? So I didn't need to invest in all that equipment. Cool. So I'm probably not the tech guru on that. But as I say, there's so much out there.
Can I give a recommendation?
Absolutely.
If you're looking for a mic, because what you want is, this is an omnidirectional, which it just does the front.
Yeah.
You can get others that'll pick up background noise, and you'll get some which will have, they'll pick up noise from the front and the back, which is great for interviewing. The one that is a USB mic that will allow you to switch between the modes is called Blue Yeti.
Yeah.
In other words, there's a switch on the back that you can put it in front of you, go, okay, interview style, and away you go. Awesome. So that's the way to go. Mike says how to hook up two mics. Depends what you're recording into. For them, like if you're recording into a computer, you can get a little headphone jack from Rode. I'll bring the thing along, which enables you to basically split the whole channel into mic audio. What we'll do is, you know what? In the email we sent out after, I'm going to get through a bunch of links to places.
Absolutely.
But my experience is storedj.com.au. Those guys are incredible. They'll help you. So we'll give some more information on equipment.
Yeah.
So you're there, you're going, I'm producing an hour's worth of content every week now.
Yeah.
I want to just talk a little bit about structure before we jump into using it.
Yeah. What
did you learn early on about structuring the conversations in the radio show?
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is pre-preparing the guests a bit before. Okay. And I probably didn't spend a huge amount of time doing that, but it was more explaining to them, listen, this is a conversation, right? It's not a monologue. And I may interrupt you a little bit at times just because I want to keep it engaging, because that is the risk. Sometimes you'll get guests where they'll just go on and it's difficult to stop them, right? So that's really, really important. Because no one just wants to listen to a monologue.
Yeah.
The other thing is pretty quickly I got sort of, having a few different segments worked really well. So I had the Reuben's rant. I started that quite early on, where I had like a 2-minute rant, which was a lot of fun. And you could create a little segment for that as well. And actually, just really easily, I made that its own little podcast as well. Just the Reuben's rant, so you can find that and hear them all too. But so having a Reuben's rant, I had what I call Propeller Head of the Week, which was just a new, often a bit of a technological thing, or it might just be sort of some kind of shortcut or hack that I found was working really well.
Yep.
Often sort of tech related. And then I always have with my guests, I ask them for their top 3 tips at the end, right? So just even having those 3 or 4 sort of segments just really worked well. Yeah. And then, a bit of a structure the way you talk to people. And you learn that over time, which is, once again, nothing too serious, but asking them obviously about their background, trying to ask them a few challenging questions that they've got to think about, like what you asked me. Ask them what's worked well, what hasn't worked well. And before you know it, you've had the conversation for half an hour or so, and then it's getting towards the end. So having a few different segments and a bit of a structure for the conversation, which tends to sort of, you tend to replicate that with all the different guests.
That's perfect. Yeah. I mean, different structures, some people like to start off light and easy and save the difficult questions to ask. You got people like Steve Crawford who just like to jump straight in and go.
Yeah.
No, there's lots of different structures, but as long as you know where you're at and they kind of know what's coming, then it can work really well. So you've got this structured recording. You've got pieces. You kind of know where bits and you know where the rant is. You know where the propeller head. You have the ability to cut it up. How do you go from having that to suddenly putting it out in a format where you can use it through podcasting in other areas? Let's talk about that.
Well, that was obviously a bit of a a stage process in terms of how I did it, and looking online and finding a lot of research how to do it. But certainly I think the reason for the longevity is that I ended up being able to systemize that quite well.
Okay.
So I didn't have to spend a huge amount of time in post-production. So the way it's been going for the last quite a long time is I'll literally I'll get the podcast done.
Yep.
I'll download it to a to a Dropbox, and I get someone in America who writes up show notes. They're specialists in writing up, specialists in just doing show notes. That's all they do. Okay. Show notes for podcasts. So they listen to it. I talked to them a little bit about how the structure I wanted it. Just trying to see if I can find. Once again, I'll include them in there. So they listen to the podcast and write up some really good show notes. Okay. So that's like one of the things that and that's really good for SEO, and it's good as a blurb to when you email blast it out to clients. So that's what I did, and then I
and what does that cost you?
It was about maybe $40 a
show.
Yeah, which is not cheap. But
it's about what it costs to do a video. So it's not
but on the other hand, it's like, once again, if I didn't outsource it, I wouldn't have done it, and I probably did the first number, and then I wouldn't have done it. So, did that. And then one of my sons, is now nearly 18. He actually edits it. So he puts on a bit of sound. He cuts out a bit of crap. He cuts out some music. So he edits it, and then I once that's done, I send it to my second son, and he puts it on the website, links it all in together, and then he creates like the email blast out for clients, and then it's basically then I'll review the email blast and send it off. Now the only glitch in that whole process is getting the boys to do their stuff on time. So I've tried a few, and that's been probably the biggest frustrating, because I pay them, but then I tried saying to them, listen, if you get it done by the weekend, I'll give you $5 more, or this like. But that was probably the glitch in the process. Now there's lots of ones where you can outsource the whole lot, right? Yeah. You literally say to them, here's the audio, you do everything, right? They'll do the show notes, the editing, they'll post it on social media, they'll do the whole thing. So there are services like that. It obviously costs a bit more. But once again, you have to have some kind of system like that, because a lot of people will start the podcast and they'll be really excited, and then they'll start editing it, and then they'll start writing the show notes, and they'll spend hours on it, and I guarantee you're not going to keep it up.
Yeah, I think that's a really key point to make. That if it's not simple, if it's going to sit in your outbox. I mean, can I talk a little bit about editing the conversation? Because personally, through doing this, some people say I still talk too much, but I've learned that there are certain things I do when I'm recording it. I get all the chit chat up front, and then I'll stop and dive into it. Whenever I go from one section to another, if I slide changes, I'll stop, take a breath, wait for the slide change, and then talk, which makes it really easy to edit. What have you learned from making it the editing part as stress-free and as effort-free as possible? Well,
there's two modes of way of people that research it. There's two sort of thoughts on these. One is that you just don't edit that much.
Yeah.
You
Tim Ferriss style.
Yeah, you just kind of get it out there, right? Which is the path that I take, right? I figure once I've got the conversation the way I'm doing it, it shouldn't need that too much editing, right? Yeah. And then obviously they've got other services where they'll edit it. They'll even do things like taking out ums and ahs, and they might cut out bits that don't work. But to be honest, personally, I don't think it's necessary. So what my son was really doing was, there was cutting out, there'd be like a couple of music breaks. He'd cut those out. Before Reuben's rant, he'd put like a bit of a sound clip before it and a few things like that. So it wasn't and then he'd create like the different segments. He'd chop them up so I could share segments differently. But that's as far as I went to in editing. So once again, I personally don't think it's necessary.
So get the structure right.
Yeah.
Get the structure. Maybe even take notes. Okay, where am I at? It's 12:30. Okay, I'm about to do Reuben's rant or whatever it might be. And where did you get your audio intro and outro from?
I think it was Fiverr.
Yeah,
it was one of them.
I got mine. I'll exploding light bulb came from Fiverr.
Yeah, I reckon it was Fiverr. Yeah. So
beautiful. Anything else? I mean, in terms of equipment, software. I mean, that seems pretty straightforward.
It was, yeah. I mean, and as I said, the Omni, that software I found really good, but it's probably at the more expensive end. But it's great. You know, it submits it to you wouldn't believe how simple it is to submit your podcast to iTunes, to Spotify, to what's the Android one?
I would ice cream. No, that's an operating system. I'm not an Android user. But.
Oh, okay. So it's just so ridiculously easy from this software Omni to do that. It literally has got links to it. So you make your podcast live and it's submitted it to all these places. So you know, I'm on Spotify, I'm on iTunes, and then it's interestingly there's a whole lot of other podcasting platforms that just pick me up somehow. Like so I'm probably on like dozens of them now. You know, they just found me somehow, and they just, I don't know, they got the what's it called? I always forget what's it called when they when they pull in your data from a website.
RSS feeds.
Yeah. It's really simple, but that's what they so that's all done by RSS feed. So it's ridiculously simple to do that.
So how many podcasts are you in now?
80
podcasts.
Yep.
And you got this library. And the best part about it is it's not going away. It's actually people going back and they're listening.
Yeah.
I mean, have you done a bit of a reading of what's going on in the podcast world? Because, man, when I started listening to Tim Ferriss, I made the assumption that, everybody's listening to podcasts. But it's exploded. Oh,
it's massive. Yeah, it's just an enormous industry now. And that's why there's an enormous number of businesses that are supporting people in producing podcasts. It's huge, but that's good, and it's got its challenges because there's new podcasts coming up all the time, and it's not easy to stand out. So they're both, it's good because more people are starting to listen to them, but it's also, it's got its challenges, and also people's attention span is not that long either. So
look, I want to talk about the sort of impact it's had on your marketing with clients, because I think that's one of the most interesting parts of this. I don't think you ever set out on this to be I'm going to put this out and it's going to generate hundreds and thousands of leads. I think it just started as I'm just going to do this and see how it goes.
That's right.
But then something interesting happened with your clients, right?
Yeah, well, it's just had a massively positive impact on my clients. I'll have people I'll put it out there. I'll have people come into meetings and they say they've listened to it and they ask me questions about it. I've got one particular client who's a dentist, and he drives every week, once a week, out to sort of Berwick, which is like an outer sort of suburb, 40-minute drive, religiously listens to it. Comes, sees me in synagogue, like talks to me about it. So and then you have people, you just see around who've said they've listened to it, and it's great. Like, it gives you good sort of feedback. But definitely, I think with clients, it has a very big impact because they see you as a bit of a thought leader, and
you're on the radio.
And it's been massive. Yeah.
So what's your most enjoyable sort of situation when someone said something or you had an experience? What's the one story that sort of comes to mind?
Well, probably the thing that I really, really like, as I said, I really enjoy the fact that I'm giving other people an opportunity to tell their story as well. So literally, I'll have I had one guy. He runs this like a hearing aid sort of business. It's like a tech business where what they do is they get people look up online getting hearing aids, and they're like a booking system. They refer them to audiologists, and then they buy the equipment and make a bit of a margin on that. So it's a great sort of tech business. And I had him on it, and he came back. He said to me, "Listen, I was at like the audiologist conference, and like the CEO of the biggest company came up to me and said, 'Oh, look, I listened to you on the podcast. Like, it was really good.'" And I just thought that gave me a real kick. Because it's had its reach somewhere beyond anything I would have expected, and it might have done something for him, and I just that kind of thing gives me a kick.
It's funny, we've had this conversation before, and a lot of people go into whether it's social media or online marketing, and they're going, right, I'm going to generate 100 leads in 3 months, and that's not the game. The game is to put stuff out there that gives value and puts you and what you've got to say and, you know, who you are in a way that other people can grab it and they can use it and they can share it. And more importantly, it's just doing, you know, you probably got podcasts you recorded 2 years ago and somebody grabs it and they go, I listened to your podcast 2 years ago and bang.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just awesome getting that feedback. That's what you need to sort of keep you going. You know, I mean, you're a person that produces a whole lot of content as well, Stu, and I don't know, you know, how you feel like you do want, obviously you're doing it for enjoyment, but you do need to get some positive feedback.
You do. You do. I mean, you have you have times when, you know, you get a smaller audience than you thought, or it doesn't go quite, and you sort of come off and you must come out of the radio program. You and I are both introverts, right? You must come out of it pretty exhausted. You have that moment where you come out and you go, you have to sit down, right?
Yeah, definitely. I need a strong coffee. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
But then, I mean, I got one the other day from an advisor in Scotland who's been sent, I think it was a blog or a video by a guy called Alan Smith I spoke to 2 years ago. And he just emailed me and said, blah, blah, blah. I wish I'd found your stuff earlier. And I sat on the couch, I turned to Rachel and check that out. Smile is big on my face. And that's the moment it's worth it. And that wouldn't happen if you weren't putting content out there that was, you know, would just keep going when you didn't have to be
That's
there.
right. That's right. I will say though, one thing, sorry, talking about giving tips to people. I mean, in my show, because I was filling a radio slot, it was sort of like a 40, maybe to 50 minute show. It doesn't need to be that long. Yeah. A podcast, you know, it can be like 7 or 8 minutes, really. Like it can just be like a tip like that. It can be 20 or 30 minutes. You know, it doesn't need to be long. Particularly if you're speaking to financial planners and they want to sort of give something, a real sort of tip or something, you know, do 5-minute ones. Like I mean, the beauty of those as well is you get them transcribed and they're an article as well. So really, you know, they don't need to be long. It depends what your purpose of them is. And I probably fell in a little bit to doing long ones because I was doing a radio show. But yeah, it doesn't have to be at all.
So I'm just bringing up my thing so I can write. Hopefully it comes up. Yeah. What's your best tips? If you are someone on the is listening to this and they go, I'll get the equipment thing, but I'm just going to start. What's your best tips for the structure of the content, the energy? I want to also get your opinion on, you know, when you're in a conversation, are you thinking about how is this going to be listenable on the other end? What can I do to make it, you know, appealing? Or talk to me about your best tips around getting good content or getting that part.
Yeah. So I guess you want to work out the structure of the show. I mean, you want to have a bit of a plan for what the purpose of it is, right?
Have it the same every time?
Hey?
Have it the same?
I think so. Yeah, I think so, because I think your listeners want something that, you know, if you're going to get a good listener base, they want to know what your podcast is. Is it a 5-minute tip? Is it interviews with people? You know, what is the actual purpose of it? And I guess what you're trying to achieve as well, because if you want to have any sort of longevity on it, you know, you've got to kind of know what you want to achieve. And I do think that it shouldn't just be, I want to get, you know, 10 more leads in the door a week. I don't think it should be. I think you should, you know, I think there's something to be for jumping into doing something new. Do you know what I mean? And enjoying the challenge of it. Right. So I think that should be a part of it without, you know, whilst you want to have a purpose, I don't know that just saying I want all these client leads out of it is the right one.
Maybe find a topic that you speak about, but you like talking about, but you can talk about in a way that, you know, people listen.
Yeah.
And finally, if you want to bring guests in, choose a topic that, you know, you can connect with people that are going to be able to come in and chat about that stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what else?
Yeah. I mean, once again, if you want longevity out of it, you've got to systemize it. It's great and it's exciting to be, you know, doing the first few and, you know, editing yourself and getting super excited, but it won't last, right? And the reason why I've been able to keep it going is because, as I said, I've cut it down to probably, apart from the podcast, spending no more than an hour on it afterwards, probably less.
Cool.
So, you know, send out for your guests, if you're doing it that way, you know, I send them out a frequently asked questions. I send them a link to, you know, book in what they want to do, if they want to do it on the phone or whatever, so they can book it straight through my Calendly.
Yeah.
Get everything as kind of systemized as you can, because I guarantee you, if you don't, it won't last.
Yeah, perfect. And line it up in
Yeah.
advance.
Yeah.
Tanya, that was a really good question. And I think I wanted to jump into this one because she said she's keen to consider podcasting as a resource for clients, which I think is it's an interesting challenge because you got first challenge of structuring the information, and then you got the second challenge of getting clients to use it. How would you actually approach that? And how would you then, once you got the body of content, go about promoting it?
Yeah. Well, I think, I think that's a really good idea. As I said, a lot of the good feedback I've had is just from clients. So I reckon that's a great objective, and it's a very achievable one. I actually think, if I was just doing it that way, I would probably, even before I started, get clients sort of on the journey with me, explain to them, why you want to do it, the fact that you're doing something new, maybe the fact that you're getting out of your comfort zone, I reckon really share something, before you launch it, share something a bit about yourself and why you're doing it. And then, maybe, obviously, you start sending, you use to distribute it, you got to make sure you've got a decent website and hosting and all that stuff. Obviously start sending it out on email, maybe. And what I did was I actually asked clients, I actually emailed them and said, listen, do you want to receive this every week? Right? Yeah. Or do you want to maybe just receive highlights once a month? Right? That's a good thing to do because it actually asks, you're asking people if they want it. You don't want to just send them stuff that they don't, and meaning they've done something proactive to respond, sort of will show their interest. I don't have to change anything about, doing, having it being able to consumed in different parts of potentially doing, as I said, doing the show notes is definitely really important. Maybe transcribing certain segments of it, but maybe giving people a bit of couple of different ways of how they consume it, and get it out there. Rinse, repeat. Is it rinse, wash, repeat?
I think it's rinse. Is it wash, rinse, repeat?
Okay.
I don't know. You can tell there's too many.
I think you rinse before you wash. You obviously.
I thought you.
Oh no, maybe you wash.
Where's the spin then? When does that come?
Yeah, that's true.
Anybody who's you can tell I'm on dad duty this week, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So just in other words, that's really good advice. Get clients involved to start with. Tell them, hey, I'm doing this. I'd love you. Make sure. I think the thing you did is you shared it consistently. You didn't let it go. And then I think the other thing I took from that is create a library. Whether it's Omni or Podbean.
Yeah. Commit
to creating that library. And the second part is you got to refer to it often. You can't put it out there. You've got to be mentioning it to clients. Hey, I'll send you a link to this, and it's got to become almost like a central part of your business, because if you don't use it, they won't use it.
That's very true. Yeah.
In terms of what's your view on different modes for a sole person podcast versus a conversation podcast? Like, do you find one is easier than another, or?
Look, I think if you're doing it sole person, to me it would be. I don't see how you could do a long one. I don't know, unless you're able to just sit there and yak into a microphone for half an hour, 40 minutes. I mean, there are obviously some guys out there that can do that. Personally, I would find that very difficult. If it was going to be a solo one, I'd make it a short, sharp one with a real sort of specific kind of purpose or tip behind it.
Stories?
Yeah. Well, what are you saying? Stories if you're speaking to someone else?
You're going to do them. Well, stories are great anyway. I can't remember who once told me. They said if you're ever trying to cut down the length of presentation, cut anything that's not a story, and just leave the story.
I think that's true, and that's why when you're speaking to people, you're finding out about their story. So that's probably quite good. Sorry, Stu, I just want to mention before we go as well, we're talking about different websites. One of them, which I really want people to check out, is called Content 10X. It's Content 10X. It's actually a podcast as well. It's basically she's Amy Woods. She's based in the UK, but what her business is all about is taking podcasts or pieces of content and turning it into like a whole lot of other pieces, turning it into blog posts, into articles, into all this stuff, right? Into videos. Really cool. Whether you use her or not, but she's got a great podcast, which is Content 10X, and that's an example of a podcast that's a bit of a how to do one, right? It's like they're generally quite short podcasts. Some of them might just be her giving tips. Sometimes she might be speaking to other people, but get onto that and it'll give you some great ideas as to how you can repurpose your content.
Maybe even another thing is if there's a style that you really, really like and it appeals to you, just copy that style until you find your own.
Absolutely.
Okay. Ben said the most important point. Thank you, by the way, Ben, first for sharing about solo podcasts to be shorter and a very clear outcome of each episode. I think that's a good one.
I think that's very true.
And I think if it's just you and you got nothing else to fire against, your content has got to be really sharp.
Yeah.
And probably just about one thing, to be honest, like one story with a moral or one question.
And high energy, Stu, right? High energy.
Yeah.
Like, that's just so important, because the first couple of times I listened to myself, I was like, oh my God, you sound like you're falling asleep,
That was
you got to bring the energy.
That was one question I was going to ask you, because your radio voice has changed quite a bit.
Well, I just think you got to bring energy to it.
You do.
You really do. And my natural state is a bit reserved, right? So it does take a bit of effort for me. And you're right, it can be a bit tiring. But you need to.
You do. And there can be different energy. Like some people are like, you listen to Joe Rogan, he's like all over the shop. And then people look at like Tim Ferriss, he's quite intense energy.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's just, I think when you're getting into, I mean, I know one speaker I met at Toastmasters years and years ago used to do push-ups under the table before he went on stage.
Really? Yeah.
I got another one who kind of just has this whole, it's showtime. And I know it seems trite and weird, but Ben, we worked together on what we call, priming myself. I've got 2 pens that I hold before, I haven't got them today, before any sort of workshop. And it just and there's an image you put in your head. Like mine is that I'm a rugby player from way back. Yeah. So whenever I'm standing in front of a workshop or delivering something, I put myself in the position of I'm the team captain, and I've got to try and win the game. And suddenly it puts me in a mindset. So it is about energy. Yeah. Tanya said, great information for me to consider starting. He needs to work on her preparation. Yeah, preparation. Yeah. If you know what you're going to say, the saying becomes easy. Yeah. We'll research some of the tech websites you've mentioned. Cool. We'll shoot through some more links, Tanya.
Yeah, definitely.
Mike says, breaking down the blockages, like simply copying another style until you find your own. Yep. Yeah. Just choose someone you like and mimic. Jen wants to know, I'll ask that question in a second. Greg says, good on you, Reuben. It seems like he does it more on a passion than a business builder. You know what? I think that's like Tim Ferriss said the same thing. He said he just set out, he was going to do it 6 times. Yeah. And he wasn't trying to go anywhere. And you've done this in a direction because it's something you wanted to do. But as a result, it's
exactly right. Exactly right. Yep.
Jen, how do you, wants to know, Reuben, how do you prepare before each show?
How do I prepare?
A scotch, no, go on.
Look, is this how do I prepare myself mentally, or how do I sort of prep my guests?
Have you got a routine kind of thing before you go on air? Do you scotch in my belly, lovely scotch?
Nah, I'll usually get a coffee to sort of get myself, a little bit of artificial get up, but no. There's no particular routine. Well, it's a Wednesday. Usually Wednesday, I've gone to the gym in the morning, so maybe that helps get your mind right. It's not completely deliberate, but I think, doing exercise before anything has so much positive effect.
Pat Flynn, how to start a good podcast, says Mike. Lots of good stuff available too. There's a lot of content out there.
Huge amount. Yeah.
But give us two pieces of information. I know we're sort of nearly time up. Firstly, what are you up to now? Where is this all headed? Yeah. What are you working on? How can people maybe get involved in something that you're doing?
Yeah, well, certainly, get on and listen to the podcast, The Finance Hour, and, search through different segments. As I said, you can also look up Reuben's Rant. If you don't want to listen to a full podcast, those are like the 3-minute segments, which are a lot of fun. Yep. I'm actually now turning also my attention to writing a bit more as well. It's kind of so I've actually started writing a couple of articles for newspapers and the like. I'm just I'm pivoting a little bit towards that because I think but this has sort of given me the energy to do that. So yeah, keep an eye out for me in the papers as well. I've had a few in the Age and Herald Sun recently, and I'm going to keep doing that.
So is Reuben in the Age, is it?
Yeah.
Reuben Zelwer, the Age.
Yeah, that should do it. Yeah.
Was it there?
Anyway, it's there. You'll find it, Age or Herald Sun. It'll be there. Might not be on the first page. Obviously, my SEO is a hell of a lot better than the Age. But maybe I'll shoot you through a couple of links just out of interest anyway.
So you're also on Apple as well, aren't you?
Yeah. As I said,
the Finance Hour is there.
Yeah. So it's on iTunes. So yeah, just whatever podcast thing you use, as I said, if you're on Apple, if you're on Android, once again, I forgot what the Android one's called, but you'll find it.
There's Ben Elliott in there somewhere as well, isn't there?
No, I haven't had Ben on.
Oh.
But you've told me I should, so Ben, I'll get in touch with you.
I reckon Ben, if you want to talk about energy, Ben's got this beautiful sort of just calm, but
yeah,
it's like a very slow moving road train coming to make you feel better.
Yeah.
Cool. Mate, this has been absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for that. Any final tips? Like if someone's leaving here and they're feeling pumped and they like the idea of what you've done, they're going to use it for clients, they're going to get involved. What's the most important thing that they could take out of this conversation that you've learned, which would help them?
I think, I suppose it's like trying anything new. You may have some kind of trepidation about it. You may think, oh, am I going to be any good at it? But once again, you just got to dive in and have a go. We're really bad judges of the stuff we put out there to think whether people like it or not. Do you know what I mean? We're actually really bad judges of that ourselves. True. I can't remember where I read that, but it's really true. So, yeah, get out there, have a go. As I said, just set it as a goal to do something new this year. And I think it's one of those great things that gets people out of their comfort zone a bit and can energize you. So I think it's really good to have a start. But as I said, once you've started and you're enjoying it, systemize the hell out of it if you want to have some longevity around it.
They say the first is the hardest and the second is the most important.
Yeah.
Because you've done it twice, you'll probably do it a third time.
Yeah.
So, man, that's good. And by the way, if anybody on this podcast, if any of you know a great guest that you think would be great for Reuben to talk to, please reach out and speak to him because he's a great interviewer and it's a great podcast. So, dude, this has been awesome.
Thanks, Stu.
You've got a busy weekend ahead.
I do, yes. I do. My daughter's turning 12. It's her bat mitzvah. We're Jewish, obviously. So it's a big party on tomorrow afternoon. So, go to the gym today and then, the afternoon I'll be off.
Well, have a ball, man. I've been on, I'm not allowed to call it babysitting. It's parenting duty all week where Roach has been away, which has been interesting. I dropped my iPhone into the swimming pool Tuesday. Hey, what can you do? It was working when I pulled it out, but anyway, I'm going to head into the Apple store, get it replaced. But mate, this has been absolutely gold. Thank you so much for joining us. And to everybody else who's still sticking around at the end, I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll be having another one next week. Obviously, you've got the details of Reuben's podcast. Thank you very much for voting, those who did. Other than that, have a great weekend, and I'll catch you soon. Take care. See you later, Rubes.
Thanks, Juicy. Bye.
Bye, man. So that's another episode of the Finnovator done for another week. I hope you enjoyed the session with Reuben. You should check him out, adapttowealth.com.au, and find out a bit about him. But once again, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I hope you're enjoying it. If there's something you like about it or something you'd like to hear or just some feedback, feel free to email me at Stuart, Stewart, @aldere.com.au because ultimately the value of this lies in me being able to dig deep into topic areas, talk to people, connect with people that you want to hear from. That's it for me. Other than one thing, do me a favor. If there's something that you like about what I'm talking about and you'd like to find out more about the way I work with advice businesses like you, or alternatively, you just want to chat about an area I work with, feel free to reach out. If there's one thing I would love from this podcast, it's the ability to connect with more financial experts who are approaching this interesting period in our industry in the right way and are excited about the future. So I just want to put that out there. And if that's you, feel free to reach out. Other than that, next week I'll be back with another episode of Finnovator. But in the meantime, stay safe and have a great week.